We start the week with news of a big deal, a breakthrough in the India-China border standoff. After many years of tension, they finally have an agreement on disengagement and patrolling along the line of actual control. What does it mean? How was this deal achieved? What made China finally see sense, if they have that is, and what happens next? On Vantage tonight, we'll bring you the full story. Meanwhile, Israel's plans to attack Iran have been leaked. We'll look at what they say. New videos of Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar are out and images of his wife carrying a luxury handbag. We'll break down the narrative war that the IDF is fighting. In the Canada row, India's High Commissioner makes an explosive statement. He says Khalistanis are Canadian intelligence assets. While another Khalistani, Pannu, threatens to blow up Indian airlines. Why was Donald Trump serving French fries at McDonald's? Who was behind the terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir that left 7 people dead? Why a senator heckled King Charles in the Australian Parliament? How the number of crorpatis in India is surging? Why Moldova voted to join the EU with a razor-thin margin? And why this has upset Russia? And the latest Nobel Prize in Literature has triggered a book boom in South Korea. We'll explain the headlines first. South Korea summons the Russian ambassador, criticizes Pyongyang's decision to send troops to support Moscow's war in Ukraine. More than 1,000 North Korean soldiers are already in Russia. Moscow says cooperation between Russia and North Korea is not directed against Seoul. India to tighten aviation laws. The government plans to make hoax threats to airlines a cognizable offence. The callers will be placed on a no-fly list. Last week, more than 100 flights received fake bomb threats, triggering travel chaos and terror. So far, only a minor has been arrested. Pakistan narrowly passes constitutional amendments, giving lawmakers more power to appoint top judges. Pakistan's Chief Justice will now be selected by a parliamentary committee and have a fixed term of 3 years. Recently, many court decisions have gone in favour of jailed opposition leader Imran Khan. The battle between Kenyan president and his sacked deputy intensifies. The former deputy president calls William Ruto vicious, says the president should be held responsible if he is killed, claims past attempts on his life through poisoning. Last week, the deputy president was impeached amid differences with President Ruto. And US President Joe Biden unveils plans for free over-the-counter contraception. This comes just 2 weeks before the presidential election in the US, where reproductive rights are a key issue. Most insurance plans in the United States cover contraception, but the current law allows them to require a prescription. (1,589 days), 21 rounds of military talks, 17 rounds of diplomatic talks, and finally India and China have clinched a border deal. It is a big deal. They're set to resolve the crisis of 2020. India's Foreign Secretary announced it today. He said both sides have agreed to a patrolling arrangement, meaning Indian soldiers can return to the LAC. That's the line of actual control, LAC. It's the de facto border between India and China.
Now, as a result of the discussions that have taken place over the last several weeks, an agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas, and this is leading to disengagement and eventually a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020.
What a day to announce it. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is flying to Russia tomorrow. He is attending the BRICS summit in Kazan. And guess who else will be there? China's President Xi Jinping. So clearly, this is not a random announcement. It is supposed to set the stage, perhaps for a meeting between Modi and Xi. But more on that later. First, let's take a closer look at this deal. How will it change the LAC situation, the border situation? Think back to June 2020, India and China clashed in the Galwan Valley. Soldiers were killed on both sides. After that, the LAC became highly militarized. China blocked Indian troops from certain points. India did the same to Chinese troops. What followed was a long diplomatic and military campaign. Corps commanders met regularly, diplomats kept in touch, even foreign ministers had a couple of meetings. So one by one the issues were sorted out. In some places there was disengagement, meaning the soldiers were pulled back, and in some places buffer zones were created, zones which neither side could enter. By the middle of this year, only two issues remained, Demchok and Depsang. These are places in eastern Ladakh. Only their future remained undecided. But reports say that's not the case anymore. This border deal covers Demchok and Depsang as well. In simple words, it's like a reset. The soldiers will go back to the status quo before 2020. Which brings us to patrolling. Can Indian troops patrol the same areas as they did before? Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar says they can. He called this deal a good and positive development.
I think the understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020. I think it's a good development. It's a positive development, and I would say it's a product of very patient and very persevering diplomacy.
Such deals often have multiple moving parts. It could be days before we get a clear picture. Having said that, two things are certain. One, there is political will to fix this relationship. Neither side wants to keep this issue alive. They want to move on, maybe focus on lucrative topics. The government of India dropped a big hint this year. They openly call for more Chinese direct investments in India. Beijing, of course, was always game. Secondly, the momentum for this deal was built in the last few months. Look at all the engagements. In early July, Jaishankar met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Both men were attending an SCO meeting. Later that month, they met again in Laos. So 2 meetings in 1 month. India and China also have a special mechanism to discuss border issues. It's called the WMCC, the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination, WMCC. This group had 2 meetings in July and August. And amid all this, China started talking. Their defense ministry hinted at a breakthrough. They said India and China had expanded their consensus. Now, don't mistake this momentum for magic. This deal was not magically conjured. It is the result of years of painstaking diplomacy. Only the finishing touches were applied in the last few months. Chances are they wanted it done before the BRICS summit, much like we saw in 2017. Back then, China and India were locked in a different standoff. This was in Doklam. But before the 2017 BRICS summit, they disengaged. Prime Minister Modi went on to meet President Xi on the sidelines of that BRICS summit in 2017. So will there be a repeat in Kazan? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Prime Minister Modi is going there tomorrow. But the timing is certainly interesting. You had 4.5 years to hold talks to fix this issue. So why are you doing it now? Well, China is under a lot of pressure. That could be one reason. Their economic growth has largely stalled. Plus, they may soon have to deal with a Trump presidency in the US, meaning another tariff war. So it makes sense for China to woo India. Same with strategy. Beijing is facing pushbacks in the South China Sea. Filipino vessels are standing up to Chinese piracy. There's a standoff almost every month. So maybe Xi Jinping wants to focus his energy there in the South China Sea. But for that, he needs a stable Himalayan frontier. Those could be his reasons. What about India? What are India's reasons? New Delhi's position has always been quite clear on this. Fix the border and we can normalize ties. Perhaps China finally listened to that. We will have to wait for the details to come out, for all the details of this deal to come out. But if this deal restores the pre-2020 situation, it is a win for India. No reason to reject such a deal. Also, it's the practical thing to do. We've seen 2 wars unfold in the last 3 years. No one wants to see more of that, especially not between India and China. We're talking about 2 big and powerful neighbors. So both sides had reasons to clinch this deal. What's important is what comes next. We have disengagement, yes, but will we also have de-escalation? Remember, India and China have deployed more than 50,000 soldiers to the border. Will those troops remain there, or will there be a reduction in those numbers? That's one thing to look out for. Secondly, this deal, while very significant, is just a band-aid in the larger scheme of things. This border, the LAC, is more than 3,400 kilometers long. It is the longest unsettled border in the world, not to mention poorly drawn. And an unsettled border is a recipe for disaster, especially between two military powerhouses. And third, the competition will only get worse from here. We are talking about two countries with more than 1 billion people each, both rising politically, both expanding financially, and both with geopolitical ambitions. So naturally, it won't always be easy. Foreign Minister Jaishankar highlighted this problem too.
Here is the challenge for us, which is that we are neighbors. We have an unresolved boundary issue. They have been rising. We have also been rising. So if two large neighboring countries rise next to each other in the same time frame, it's not easy. There are very, very few historical parallels for that.
Like all relations, this one is also complicated. China is India's largest trading partner. Bilateral trade is worth nearly $118 billion. And for Beijing, India is a key market. So both sides are keen to milk the possibilities. At the same time, major political challenges exist. China is set on toppling American supremacy on the world stage. They want to dominate the world order. But India wants to reshape it, to make it more just and effective. You can see these different objectives at the BRICS too. China considers BRICS to be anti-West. India does not. How do you reconcile these differences? How do you work together when you're competing for the same things? Whether it's foreign investments or manufacturing jobs or leadership of the global South. That is the next challenge for this relationship. Of course, a lot will depend on China. Will they stick to their end of the bargain? Will they engage in good faith? Or will they betray India's trust yet again? The past, you see, does not inspire much confidence, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's been weeks in the making, but it could finally happen now. We're talking about Israel's attack on Iran. Look at the build-up. Israel has the THAAD missile system. It's an American system that was deployed recently. The US has also sent 100 soldiers to Israel to operate this system. Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the October 7th attack, is dead, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has been dropping hints. Iran could be his next target.
Well, 2 days ago, we took out Yahya Sinwar, the terrorist mastermind whose goons beheaded our men, raped our women, burnt babies alive. We took him out, and we're continuing our battle with Iran's other terrorist proxies. We're going to win this war.
Netanyahu released that video over the weekend. His home in northern Israel was attacked by a drone. It happened on Saturday morning. This was a Hezbollah operation. They launched 3 drones from Lebanon. They failed to cause any serious harm. 2 drones were intercepted. The third one struck a building and caused some damage. Israel has not released details about this strike. We don't know if this drone hit Netanyahu's home or not, or which building was damaged in the attack. But here's what we can tell you. When Hezbollah launched their attack, Netanyahu and his wife were not at the residence. No one was hurt, and their response was sharp. Israel intensified its bombing campaign in both Lebanon and Gaza.
It's a Noor. It's a Noor bath.
So Iranian proxies are gunning for Netanyahu as he prepares to attack Tehran. How do we know for sure? Well, Israel's war plans have been leaked. Americans have been gathering intelligence on Israel, and their assessments, the American assessments, have surfaced online. A source called the Middle East Spectator released these papers. Copies of these documents were first spotted on Telegram. Reports say the Middle East Spectator has links to Iran. But how did they get access to these top secret plans? Apparently, someone from within the US establishment leaked these secret documents. And they're not fake. Multiple media outlets have verified them, saying that these are legitimate papers. And what do they tell us? They describe an elaborate operation. How does Israel plan to strike Iran? Using its air force. Israeli Air Force continues preparations for strikes on Iran. That's literally the title of one of these documents. Inside, there are satellite images and intercepted conversations. They reveal the depth of Israel's planning. Apparently, the IDF is preparing dozens of aircraft and missiles. F-15 fighter jets and drones are involved. Israeli pilots have been doing training exercises. There's also a mention of 3 Israeli airfields being used: combat, search and rescue aircraft, surveillance aircraft, and refueling aircraft. Like I said, this is quite an extensive plan. It also describes the potential scale of the operation, the use of multiple airfields, aircraft and drones, refueling aircraft, search and rescue teams. All of this suggests that Israel is planning a big operation. And which targets are they aiming for? Well, there is no mention of targets in these papers, but several reports claim that Israel will go after Iranian military sites. Although Tehran believes it will be worse, that Israel will strike its nuclear installations. So Iran has issued a warning and lodged a complaint at the United Nations.
We have sent our protest letter to the Secretariat and the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is a fundamental responsibility of the Foreign Ministry, and we will certainly pursue this matter further.
It all comes down to Netanyahu now. Taking out Sinwar gave him a political boost. A new poll, in fact, reflects this. Netanyahu's Likud party has come out on top. If elections were to be held today, Netanyahu's party, the Likud party, will be the largest one in Israel. But here's the other side of the story. Israelis do not want the war to go on, at least according to this poll. They want Prime Minister Netanyahu to sign a deal and get the hostages back from Gaza. In fact, many Israelis have been protesting. Over the weekend, they took to the streets in Tel Aviv.
I think the recent developments, especially Sinwar's death, makes us both extremely anxious for her fate, but also hopeful that this might be a turning point, that this should be used as a mean to seal the deal, to end the hostage situation and bring them all home now.
So I think that these events that we saw this week provide a strong message to all of our enemies that we are continue to fight them and we will not surrender to the terrors. But at the same time, we are looking to have a deal to bring our hostages back home as soon as possible. And this is the right time to do it.
Will Netanyahu listen to these calls? To free all hostages, he must agree to a ceasefire, and that's something that he keeps rejecting. But the US has been piling on the pressure, asking the Israeli leader to end the fighting. US President Biden is sending his Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, to Israel today. This will be Blinken's 11th visit to Israel in 1 year. He's trying to revive the dialogue for a ceasefire, although it's a long shot. With the US elections round the corner and Biden's time in office nearing its end, Netanyahu has every reason to thwart his moves. And given his recent successes, he's more likely to take bigger risks now. As you know, wars aren't just fought on the battlefield. There are a number of ways to cripple the enemy. One of the most important ones is crushing morale, making the enemy lose the will to fight, lose the will to pick up a weapon. And this is the best victory of all. And that is what Israel tried to achieve on Friday, when they released the video of Yahya Sinwar's final moments. Those of you following the war closely have already seen this. Sinwar in the chair, covered in dust, trying to throw a stick at a drone. Israel thought that this would project its strength and demoralize its enemies. But the opposite happened. Israel's enemies thought that Sinwar's last moments were inspirational. He was wearing the symbolic Palestinian keffiyeh scarf. His arm was injured, but he was still defiant, still trying to attack the high-tech Israeli enemy. That is how Hamas is choosing to interpret Sinwar's death. So in terms of the narrative war, releasing Sinwar's video was a self-goal by Israel. And now they're in damage control mode. Before his death video, what had Israel been saying about Yahya Sinwar? They portrayed him as a coward, lurking in the tunnels, protecting himself with human shields, while ordinary Palestinians paid the price for his actions. That was the original Israeli narrative. And now they're trying to reinforce it.
Tonight we are declassifying footage of Sinwar from just a few hours before the October 7th massacre, as well as his movements inside Gaza as he fled over the past year.
That was allegedly footage from October 6, 2023. That's last year, October 6th, the night before the Hamas attack on Israel took place. Sinwar is seen preparing to live underground. He's moving supplies, water bottles, pillows, and mattresses. He's taking his wife and children into an underground shelter. Now, Israel says it's beneath his house in Khan Yunis. So they claim that he was hiding in a bunker just hours before the October 7th attack. Why is Israel releasing this footage now, more than a year after it allegedly happened? Well, to reinforce their original narrative that Sinwar was a coward who protected himself and his family and let ordinary Gazans die. Israel also highlighted some other things.
Last month, Sinwar's DNA was found on a piece of tissue he used. A few hundred meters from a tunnel where 6 Israeli hostages were brutally executed in Tel Sultan in Rafah. Then Sinwar fled yet again.
So apparently Sinwar was surrounded by hostages whom he used as human shields and disposed of at his convenience. Then listen to this.
Killing Sinwar is the result of a year of operational and intelligence efforts to bring him and other Hamas leaders to justice.
He said Sinwar's death was the result of intelligence efforts. Do you remember the recent headlines? They called Sinwar's killing a stroke of luck. They said he was found by chance. Now, Israel wants to change that narrative as well, because it makes their intelligence services look weak, and Israel cannot afford to show any weakness. Also, did you notice something else? The Israeli spokesperson said all of what he did in English. So he wasn't speaking to the domestic audience. He was speaking to all of us, English speakers around the world. That message was directly from the IDF to us, to make sure that we are listening to their version of events. Israel does it quite well. It reaches out to its audience, its intended audience, directly. Let me show you another example. This is a post by the IDF's Arab spokesperson. He put that up in Arabic. And here's a rough translation of what he said. Did Sinwar's wife enter the tunnel with him on October 6 carrying a Birkin bag estimated to cost about $32,000? I leave the comment to you. While the people of Gaza do not have enough money for a tent or basic necessities, we see many examples of Yahya Sinwar and his wife's special love for money. The IDF says that Sinwar's wife has an Hermes Birkin bag, one that costs $32,000. Now, for our Indian audience, that's about 27 lakh rupees. Is it true? Is it really a Birkin, an Hermes Birkin? The story has divided the internet. The fact is, Birkins are not openly available to the public. People can't just enter a showroom and buy one. They need to be vetted first. The whole process is so tedious. There's even a class action lawsuit against Hermes. Of course, you can always buy a pre-owned bag, but critics say it's hard to imagine Sinwar's wife getting one. Plus, the Birkin that the IDF mentioned is quite large. The dimensions apparently are not right for an original bag. So the jury is still out on the Birkin. But there's no debate on why the IDF put out this story, and that too in Arabic. It was to undermine any new support for Yahya Sinwar, support that he gained in the Arab world after the video of his last moments was released. It's a fantastic example of how Israel fights the narrative war. We're waiting to see if they win this one.
Well, 24 hours have gone by and the person who had placed the bomb over here has still not been identified by the Delhi police. I'll just try and show you around in the visuals over here, the area in which the bomb blast happened. This is the area where the bomb blast happened, and if you look around from this entire area, on the other side are the lines, are the eateries that are lined up over here, as you have been mentioning. Now, all these shops are closed at this very point. Now, remember, the impact was, this entire blast was such that there are broken windows that can be seen on the other side of the road as well. Now, what Delhi police sources are telling us, that in the investigation that they have done or through the CCTV footage that they have been able to go through at this point in time, 3 people can be seen as suspects or have been identified as people of interest. One of them was a person who was seen at this very spot on Saturday night at approximately 10:30, 11 p.m. in the night. He was seen at this very spot, he waited at this spot and then went away from here. That person has not been identified at this point in time. Apart from that, 2 other people who were also seen in and around this entire area having suspicion movement. Now, in the CCTV footages that have been gone through by the Delhi police at this point in time, these 3 people are being said as the persons of interest. However, the identification of either of these 3 people have still not happened, and the person or the perpetrator of this entire crime has still not been identified by the Delhi police. Once the investigation was taken over by the Delhi police or started by Delhi police yesterday, there was one person who was initially interrogated by them, and then eventually he was allowed to let go of as well. So definitely at this point in time, there is no substantial evidence that the Delhi police, or for that matter any other agency, be it the NSG or the CRPF, have been able to pinpoint as to who could be the person who might be behind this attack. Yes, there are different theories that are being looked into at this point in time as to what could be the reason for using a bomb which had actually such a high radius of impact that shops which are approximately 20 to 30 meters away from this spot, they have been impacted. But interestingly, in these bombs, there were sharp objects, no sharpnels, no broken glass material that was put over here, because generally in bombs or IEDs that are used, such materials are being put into the bomb so that the entire bomb becomes more potent, so that once the explosion happens, then these objects, sharpnels and other things, could actually go ahead and hurt people, and the impact of that blast could increase. But interestingly, in this explosion, there has been no sort of sharpnels or any other sharp objects that have been used. So was this entire blast done just to give some sort of a message, is something that is being investigated. Apart from this, another thing that is being looked into is the Khalistani angle. Remember, one of the channels on Telegram in fact had posted this, that this entire incident has been done by Khalistani supporters, because the manner in which the attacks are happening on Khalistanis across the world, they wanted to give this message that Khalistanis are much closer to the Indian agencies that they expect. Now, if I could just show you over here, just moments ago, a team of CRPF had come over here. Remember, CRPF have these expertise when it comes to looking into IED blast, because they are the people who are operating in places like Dantewada and other places in Chhattisgarh where there is a massive moist impact and there is a lot of IEDs that are being used. So over here there is also, it is being said that IEDs were used, and hence a team of CRPF had come up over here. They have monitored the entire location over here. They have measured the size of impact that the bomb blast has made. Somewhere or the other they will try to figure out as to what is the quantity of explosives that were used over here, and what kind of explosive was also used over here. Was it a highly technical IED, or was it an IED that could have been made by anyone, is something that the CRPF will come out with. But at this point in time, as the investigation is going ahead, the biggest issue is that the person who had placed the bomb over here has still not.
And speaking of narrative wars, Canada is waging one with India. Their Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is leading it. He wants the world to believe that India is some rogue state, killing dissidents abroad, using diplomats to spy and flouting international laws. But New Delhi is setting the record straight. It has fielded the man at the center of this controversy. I'm talking about Sanjay Verma, India's High Commissioner in Ottawa. Canada had declared him a person of interest in the Nijjar case. So in protest, India recalled him. But before leaving, he sat down for an interview. And he said two very important things. One, Khalistani extremists are Canadian assets. And two, Indian diplomats never spied on Canadians. Listen to this.
Khalistani extremists are being encouraged all the time. This is my allegation. I also know that some of these Khalistani extremists and terrorists are deep assets of Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Again, I'm not giving any evidence. It is all overt. There is nothing covert. It is all overt. We read the newspaper, we read their statements, we read their social media posts, and we infer from there.
The first claim is very serious. Sanjay Verma says Khalistanis work for Canada. They're Canadian assets. They're deep state assets. And their objective? Clearly to destabilize India. In the interview, Sanjay Verma also spoke about Hardeep Singh Nijjar's case. He said that he condemned any murder, but he ruled out any Indian role in this case. As for the so-called evidence, he said there isn't any. He says Canada is yet to share any proof. Despite that, Canadian officials pushed on. Apparently, they wanted to question 6 Indian diplomats, the High Commissioner plus 5 others. Just one problem though, diplomats have legal immunity. You can't just call them up for questioning. So Canada asked India to waive their immunity to allow officials to question them, to allow Canadian officials to question the Indian diplomats. Again, no evidence given. Not even a reason for being named person of interest in this case. It tells you how baseless their investigation is. More like a witch hunt. If only they turned their focus elsewhere. Perhaps to the United States, where the apostle of peace, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, is at it again. His latest sermon of harmony is out. He's threatening to blow up Indian airlines. That's right. Pannu says, don't fly Air India from November 1st to 19th. But why these dates? Well, they coincide with the anti-Sikh riots of 1984. So Pannu says if you fly on these dates, your life will be in danger. And it's not a new threat. This time last year, he issued the same warning, don't fly Air India. In December 2023, he threatened to attack the Indian Parliament. In January this year, he threatened to kill Punjab's Chief Minister. I must say, that's some serious activism there. A forceful use of free speech. And what are the Americans doing about it? Are they investigating him? Well, quite the opposite. They're investigating an alleged plot against Pannu. It involves a former Indian official. His name is Vikas Yadav. The US says he ordered the hit on Pannu. Now, Yadav is a wanted man in the US, so technically Washington can seek his extradition. What happens then? Will India hand him over? Well, they may not have to. You see, Vikas Yadav was arrested by Delhi police last year. Not in this case, in a totally different one. He faces charges of kidnapping and extortion. And right now he's out on bail. Until that case is settled, the one in India, Vikas Yadav cannot be extradited. And how long will that take for this case to be wrapped up? We'll be talking about Indian courts, so it could be years or decades. In the meantime, expect Pannu to continue his activism, his non-violent appeals to blow up planes. India's foreign minister talked about this controversy today. He called it a clear double standard.
If you threaten the Indian High Commissioner, he is supposed to accept it as freedom of speech. But if an Indian journalist says the Canadian High Commissioner walked out of South Block looking very grumpy, it is apparently foreign interference.
We don't know how these cases will evolve, neither the Nijjar one nor the Pannu one, but one thing is quite clear, both cases have exposed Western hypocrisy. Just think about it. Pannu is openly threatening to attack Indian planes, to kill Indian politicians. In what world is this activism of freedom of speech? If an American plane was threatened, would the reaction be the same? In the past, they have jailed people for such threats, but no such action against Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. It's important to call out these double standards, to expose Western reality. If not, they will keep shaping the narrative around India.
My first day at McDonald's, I'm looking for a job. Hey, how much are you paying me? This is fun. I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again. Now I have worked at McDonald's. I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala. Okay, she never worked here.
The golden arches behind me are one of America's most recognizable symbols. They stand for McDonald's, a fast food chain known for its value meals, but in the US it represents more than just a meal. It embodies the American way of life. Nearly 9 out of 10 American households visited McDonald's in the last 1 year. 9 out of 10. You could say it's part of American culture now, which is why it is the new battleground for American politics too. We are 2 weeks away from the presidential election, and turns out McDonald's is the new swing state. On Sunday, Donald Trump made a pit stop there. He was in Philadelphia. He stopped at McDonald's. But this wasn't just for a quick meal or photos. Trump decided to get the real McDonald's experience, trading his signature suit for an apron.
My first day at McDonald's, I'm looking for a job.
Hello, President Trump. I'm Derek Jack and Tony. I'm the owner.
Well, that's a good owner. Must be a wealthy guy, huh? Thank you very much. Well, I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So, if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
With the apron on, it was time for some real work. So Trump jumped into action. He took turns at the fryer, dunking baskets of fries into the oil. The process seemed to have fascinated him. It won't be a stretch to say he was loving it.
Never touched by a human hand. Nice and clean. I'm very superstitious.
Trump did not just stop at salting fries. He went all the way, serving customers through the drive-through window and even greeting some fans.
Oh, okay, great. This is all on Trump. Oh, hold on. I'm allowed to do that, right? Yeah. Let's check and make sure it's everything you said it would be. It's better be. It's going to be the best yet. I made it myself. You're the man. Thank America great. Thank you, man. Thank you. Hello. How are you? What a beautiful woman. Look at a beautiful child. It's like the perfect looking person. Thank you so much. You are not arguing. I can see. We pray for you, and you are the type of person we want to be the president. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So nice. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, please don't let the United States become Brazil, my native Brazil.
Oh, we'll keep it good.
Please.
We're going to make it better than ever, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Trump and McDonald's, it's a love affair that goes back a few decades. In 2002, Donald Trump appeared in a McDonald's commercial endorsing a $1 burger. During his 2016 presidential campaign, it became his breakfast staple, an Egg McMuffin in the morning. Even in the White House, Trump did not let go of his McDonald's. The White House staff did make him burgers, but they weren't as good as his favorite Quarter Pounder. So his bodyguard had to often make a run to the nearby McDonald's. Clearly, it was his guilty pleasure, and Trump made it quite public, serving McDonald's meals at White House events. But why this stint now? Why did Donald Trump choose to suddenly don the apron? Well, the answer is Kamala Harris. Her campaign says that she worked at a McDonald's when she was in college. She worked the register, she manned the fry station, and it's a story that Harris has repeated multiple times. It's to highlight her middle-class upbringing. But the Republicans don't believe it. They think that she's lying.
Now I have worked at McDonald's. I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala. Okay, she never worked here.
Guess it's not a battle for the White House anymore. It's a battle for who aced McDonald's. Harris says she did it first. Trump is salty about it. And he's gotten down to salting fries to prove otherwise.
This is fun. I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again.
Trump thinks the experience was a success, but did the voters think so? The reaction on the internet is mixed. Some love it, some are amused, and others are bewildered. Because this election season is throwing up a lot, from presidential fries to $1 million cash prize. Yes, you heard it right. $1 million. Elon Musk is giving away $1 million every day until November 5th. That's the day America goes to polls. The prize goes to a registered voter. So what's the catch here? Well, it isn't for just any voter. The person must sign a petition by Elon Musk's Super PAC. A PAC is a political action committee. This petition pledges support for free speech and gun rights. So the person must sign it, and they must be a registered voter from one of the 7 swing states in the US. Only then do they qualify for this lottery. The winner is chosen at random, and this person gets $1 million.
Every day from now until the election, we're giving out $1 million prize. And all you have to do is sign a petition in support of the Constitution. It's very straightforward. You don't even have to vote. You don't have to vote.
Now, all of this sounds too simple: register and win money. But is this even legal? Well, the US federal law prohibits bribery in elections. You cannot pay someone to register or vote. If you do, you can end up in prison for 5 years. Does that mean that Elon Musk is risking jail time? Well, not really, because there's a loophole here. Musk is technically paying people to sign up for a petition. He's not paying them to register or vote. So he could be safe from legal action. But the Democrats are questioning his intent. They say it is vote buying. Either way, with polls showing a close battle ahead, it looks like the billionaire is only raising the stakes. In India's Jammu and Kashmir, terrorism is rearing its ugly head again. 6 migrant workers and a doctor were killed in a terror attack. They were working on a tunnel project. The terrorists attacked their camp, cut the power supply, and then opened fire at the workers. This is the worst attack targeting civilians in the region since June. The timing is no coincidence, though. Last month, Kashmir held its first election since 2014. The process was peaceful. A new government is now in place. Democracy is back in the valley. So these attacks are an attempt to undo the gains and derail Kashmir's progress. Our next report tells you more.
The workers had just returned from a long day at work. They sat down to eat. And that's when the attack took place. 2 terrorists opened fire at the camp. 6 workers were killed, and so was a doctor. It was one of the worst attacks targeting civilians in Jammu and Kashmir in recent months. The attack took place near Gagangir, located near the town of Sonmarg. The 6 killed were working on a tunnel project known as the Z-Mode Tunnel. It will connect Kashmir's Ganderbal district to Sonmarg. That way, there will be year-long connectivity as the current road closes during winters. Not just that, the project aims to provide all-weather connectivity from Srinagar to Ladakh. The incident took place in a deeply forested area. Officials say it was very well planned. The terrorists first approached the camp, then sabotaged the power lines, ensuring there was no electricity. Finally opened fire on the workers and the doctor. Security forces arrived swiftly after the attack. The area has now been cordoned off. The army is conducting search operations to find the terrorists. Pakistan-backed the Resistance Front, or TRF, has claimed responsibility for the attack. It's an offshoot of the Lashkar-e-Taiba. The TRF was formed in 2019, and since then, it has been behind multiple attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. In 2023, India designated it as a terrorist organization. The latest attack comes just days after Jammu and Kashmir got a new government. Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has condemned the attack, calling it cowardly. His father, National Conference President Farooq Abdullah, also said that Kashmir will not become Pakistan. Union Home Minister Amit Shah also added that those responsible will face the harshest response.
इस हमले की जितनी निंदा की जाए, जितना इसके खिलाफ बोला जाए कम है। बेगुनाहों के खिलाफ इस तरह तशद्दुद का इस्तेमाल ये कहाँ से जायज़ है और इससे हासिल क्या होगा। पिछले 35 साल से तो हम ये देखते आए हैं, लेकिन जम्मू कश्मीर में कुछ नहीं बदला। जो जम्मू कश्मीर के लिए मिलेगा वो पुरअमन एक माहौल में मिलेगा।
Now, this is the second attack on migrants since the new government was sworn in, and the third such incident this year. On Friday, the body of a migrant worker from Bihar was recovered. It was riddled with bullet wounds. Not just that, terror attacks have been on the rise in the region in recent months. On May 4th, one soldier was killed after terrorists attacked an Air Force convoy. On June 9th, 9 pilgrims were killed after terrorists attacked their bus. On June 24th, 2 soldiers were injured in an encounter. On July 8th, 5 soldiers were killed in an ambush. On July 15th, 4 soldiers were killed in another terror attack. And now this. This year, Kashmir had its first election since 2014, the first since Article 370 was removed. The elections were peaceful, but cross-border terrorism has been bleeding Kashmir for long, because these attacks not only threaten its peace, but also its progress.
Where 24 hours have gone by and the person who had placed the bomb over here has still not been identified by the Delhi police. I'll just try and show you around in the visuals over here, the area in which the bomb blast happened. This is the area where the bomb blast happened, and if you look around from this entire area, on the other side are the lines, are the eateries that are lined up over here, as you have been mentioning. Now all these shops are closed at this very point. Now remember, the impact was, this entire blast was such that there are broken windows that can be seen on the other side of the road as well. Now what Delhi police sources are telling us, that in the investigation that they have done, or through the CCTV footage that they have been able to go through at this point in time, 3 people can be seen as suspects or have been identified as people of interest. One of them was a person who was seen at this very spot on Saturday night at approximately 10:30, 11 p.m. in the night. He was seen at this very spot, he waited at this spot and then went away from here. That person has not been identified at this point in time. Apart from that, 2 other people who were also seen in and around this entire area having suspicion movement. Now in the CCTV footages that have been gone through by the Delhi police at this point in time, these 3 people are being said as the persons of interest. However, the identification of either of these 3 people have still not happened, and the person or the perpetrator of this entire crime has still not been identified by the Delhi police. Once the investigation was taken over by the Delhi police or started by Delhi police yesterday, there was one person who was initially interrogated by them, and then eventually he was allowed to let go of as well. So definitely at this point in time there is no substantial evidence that the Delhi police, or for that matter any other agency, be it the NSG or the CRPF, have been able to pinpoint as to who could be the person who might be behind this attack. Yes, there are different theories that are being looked into at this point in time as to what could be the reason for using a bomb which had actually such a high radius of impact that shops which are approximately 20 to 30 meters away from this spot, they have been impacted. But interestingly, in these bombs there were no sharp objects, no sharpnels, no broken glass material that was put over here, because generally in bombs or IEDs that are used, such materials are being put into the bomb so that the entire bomb becomes more potent, so that once the explosion happens, then these objects, sharp nails and other things could actually go ahead and hurt people, and the impact of that blast could increase. But interestingly, in this explosion there has been no sort of sharpnels or any other sharp objects that have been used. So was this entire blast done just to give some sort of a message is something that is being investigated. Apart from this, another thing that is being looked into is the Khalistani angle. Remember, one of the channels on Telegram in fact had posted this that this entire incident has been done by Khalistani supporters, because the manner in which the attacks are happening on Khalistanis across the world, they wanted to give this message that Khalistanis are much closer to the Indian agencies that they expect. Now, if I could just show you over here, just moments ago a team of CRPF had come over here. Remember, CRPF have this expertise when it comes to looking into IED blasts, because they are the people who are operating in places like Dantewada and other places in Chhattisgarh where there is a massive Maoist impact and there is a lot of IEDs that are being used. So over here there is also, it is being said that IEDs were used, and hence a team of CRPF had come up over here. They have monitored the entire location over here. They have measured the size of impact that the bomb blast has made. Somewhere or the other they will try to figure out as to what is the quantity of explosives that were used over here, and what kind of explosive was also used over here. Was it a highly technical IED, or was it an IED that could have been made by anyone, is something that the CRPF will come out with. But at this point in time, as the investigation is going ahead, the biggest issue is that the person who had placed the bomb over here has still not been identified, and hence the reason why this blast took place on a Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. is still not very clear. Well, this entire spot was actually closed by the Delhi police for more than 12 to 13 hours yesterday itself. It is only at approximately 7:30 to 8 p.m. in the evening yesterday that this crime scene was opened and the barricades were removed from this entire area. So during that period of 12 to 13 hours, agencies like CRPF, NSG and the Delhi police, the FSL of the Delhi police, have all visited the spot and have collected evidences from on ground over here. Now the team of CRPF that had come over here, they had just come up over here to measure the impact of this entire crime scene, or the impact of bombs that were used over here. Now, as we were speaking up of the crime scene being opened, police officers have now reached over here. They are trying to get the media away from the crime spot. But yes, as we speak, most of the evidences have already been collected from this entire area. The team of CRPF that had come up over here, they had just come up to measure the impact of this entire incident and how much explosive was used so that such a massive hole can actually be made over here. This is something that has been measured by the CRPF at this point in time. Definitely, investigation is going on from different angles in this entire matter, but the first focus of all these investigating agencies is to actually make sure that the person who had placed the bomb over here, that can be identified. More than 24 hours have elapsed. There still is no clarity as to who was the person who had placed this bomb over here and at what time was this bomb placed over here. Well, 24 hours have gone by and the person who had placed the bomb over here has still not been identified by the Delhi police. I'll just try and show you around in the visuals over here the area in which the bomb blast happened. This is the area where the bomb blast happened, and if you look around from this entire area, On the other side are the lines, are the eateries that are lined up over here, as you have been mentioning. Now all these shops are closed at this very point. Now remember, the impact was, this entire blast was such that there are broken windows that can be seen on the other side of the road as well. Now what Delhi police sources are telling us that in the investigation,
Indian social media is obsessed with a new business deal. It involves two very unlikely partners, a movie production house and a vaccine maker. Both are household names in India. You may have heard of Karan Johar's Dharma Productions. He sold 50% of his company for 1,000 crore rupees. The buyer is Adar Poonawalla, the owner of Serum Institute of India. It's the biggest vaccine-making company in the world. It became famous during the pandemic because Serum Institute was making Covishield vaccine in India. Imagine them buying Dharma. It's a joke that writes itself. Take a look. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Australia, an alpaca sneezes on King Charles during a meet and greet event. In India, a Chennai beach lights up with bioluminescent waves, and hundreds dressed as zombies take over the streets of Chile in an annual zombie walk. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1994, the US and North Korea signed a landmark deal. It was called the Agreed Framework. North Korea agreed to freeze its existing nuclear program. Both countries promised normalization of relations. The deal collapsed in 2002 when the US accused Pyongyang of secretly continuing its nuclear program. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Ha ha ha.